Poppy, can I put the chocolate chips in yet? Can I put the chocolate chips in yet? I said, no, buddy, we just put the milk in the bowl. Chocolate chips go almost last. And that, my friends, is a leadership lesson. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Think storytelling's just for bedtime? Nah, it's the secret sauce for business magic. Stuck in a rut with bland pitches and yawning clients? Enter Boost Your Business with StoryPower. 6 weeks of epic storytelling training. It's like leveling up in a video game but for your career. Master the art of narrative and watch connections blossom like a viral TikTok. Simple, impactful, and game-changing. Ready to transform your biz vibes? Dive in now and make storytelling your superpower.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. I was watching a video this morning about health and maintenance, and it was pretty fascinating to me. He said, if you get up in the morning, you go straight to the coffee pot, which sometimes I do. Then what happens is you create this strange enigma within your cardiovascular system where the caffeine is causing vasorestriction, and yet from sleeping overnight, all the blood in your body is still pooled and thick. Higher viscosity. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but that word viscosity also happens in your engine in your car. If you pour that fluid in the top of the engine block and it says 5W30 or 10W30 or 550, something of that nature, what it's telling you is there's a certain period of time before it heats up that it has a higher viscosity. It's thicker. It's like trying to move jelly through a straw. You ever had a milkshake and you get that strawberry stuck in the bottom of it? Yeah, it's like that. But see, the challenge is when you get up right out of bed and you go straight to the coffee pot, your body is already doing something all on its own. It has its own natural processes. What did it do with all the waste that it took out of the blood and the lungs and the kidneys and the liver over the course of the night? Well, all of those things are still moving throughout your body. And I'm listening to him talk about vasorestriction and the viscosity of the blood and how much water you should have in your body. And what does your kidney do or your liver do to waste that stuff out? And how does that affect you ready for this? Your eyesight. Sitting in the chair, standing at a desk. Which one has better impact on your body? Does it matter if you're standing 8 hours a day or sitting 8 hours a day or walking 8 hours a day? And the answer is yes. All of it matters. Here's what matters even more. It's not just doing the right thing. It's doing the right thing at the right time. An example is, do you know you can actually die from water poisoning? Did you know that? You can actually put so much water in your body that your body can't process it, and the liver and the kidneys will shut down. Now, ask a doctor, a nurse, a medical professional about exactly how that science works. But I do know, as a firefighter, we responded to a medical emergency of a guy who had been forced through hazing to drink 2.5 gallons of water in less than an hour. He didn't make it. That sounds crazy that something like water, which your body demands, could kill you. Except when you do things completely out of order, when you mix the wrong kind of chemicals in the wrong order, when you pour them too fast. For an example, right here in the studio this last weekend, a lady made soap. That was the class that she was teaching. We just filmed it for her. And she made a really important point. She said, when you put the lye into the water, the chemical reaction of the lye in the water causes the temperature to spike. Well, a couple of things happen when that happens, and she can explain the chemical process much better than I can, but I heard one thing that really, really stood out, and she said, if you try to work with that too soon, it can bubble over like a volcano. The other thing that can happen is if you don't stir it up enough, you've all done this, you've made gravy, you made mashed potatoes maybe, and you get those big lumps in there, maybe in your pancakes. But with mashed potatoes, you kind of like those lumps. That's how you know it's not flakes from a box. But in your gravy, Look, if you have to chew your gravy, you're in trouble. And you're not from Texas unless there's bacon or sausage causing that. You shouldn't have to chew your gravy. Your grits, they're not supposed to have big lumps the size of a golf ball either, but if you go to Waffle House, that's probably what you're going to get. If you make pancakes and you have those big lumps in it when you stir it up and that batter's still there, you know when you're biting into it, you bite into what seems like a little crunchy thing, and then poof, you got powder inside your pancake all of a sudden. You got the big lumps in there if you don't mix it up well. When you do that with lye, and then you make a bar of soap, here's what happens. That temperature spike that happens when you put the lye together with the water can actually get hot enough to burn your skin. Not to mention what lye all by itself does. But through the course of the process, you can actually meld those lumps, like the lumps in the gravy, the lumps of your pancake, into your soap and not even know it. Well, what happens? Well, you take a shower, you're rubbing the soap upon yourself, you get to the place where that lump of dry lye is inside the soap. And like the powder in your pancake, the lump in your gravy, when the water hits it, it releases the same chemical reaction it did in the making process. Now you've got water in your shower that's coming out at a reasonable temperature, but you've got lye on your skin that's mixing with the water and the temperature spiking. It's like putting ice on your skin with salt, and you can actually cause the salt to freeze at a lower temperature, and it'll actually burn your skin with cold burns, just like dry ice would. Now you've done the same thing with lye. Now, why in the world is any of that chemistry experiment a leadership lesson? Well, in the same way that me and my grandkids making chocolate chip cookies when they don't come from the tube and you have to mix all this stuff together, you can't just pour the milk in the bowl, add a couple of eggs, and throw some chocolate chips in there. Doesn't work that way. You've got to build the batter. You also can't just open the oven and throw in some chocolate chips and then throw in a couple of eggs and then throw in a scoop of flour and expect cookies to come out. No, they have a process. And just like in baking or cooking, you got to do things in the right order. If you're trying to make tacos, you got to brown the meat before you put the seasoning in. Otherwise, the fat and the grease running off the meat, unless you're using venison or turkey, when the fat and the grease run off the meat and you drain that off, all the flavor goes with it. No, you gotta cook it down, drain the grease, add a little water to simmer back in, then add your taco seasoning. Otherwise, you get something completely different. The process is a process for a reason. When you're building a business, I've been building a small business for a minute now. We're still on the grow. We haven't had too many down years. We've kind of been on a steady stair step up, not as fast as I'd like. I'd love to see a hockey stick. Right now, we're still kind of in the getting off the bottom phase. I'm okay with that, though. It's constant growth. It's peaceful progression, as my friend Natalie would say. It's not anxious acceleration. It's peaceful progress. I'm okay with that. But there's a way to get those things out of order. There are leaders all the time who look at business and they're like, just get stuff done. In fact, I have a bracelet at home, one of the little silicone bracelets like this one. This one says, tell your story, positioned for victory. Got this in Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. But I have one that says, get stuff done. I actually have one that says the other word too, the other S word, not stuff. Because there's a driving mentality in leadership today, especially in entrepreneurialism, that you just got to pound. You got to hustle. You just got to stay at it. You just got to keep doing it. And it doesn't ask the question, am I doing the right thing at the right time, or am I just doing a thing? Because just doing a thing, just looking busy, my stepdad used to say that all the time, do something. And even if it's wrong, just do something. Don't sit around doing nothing. And for a while, I thought that was the best philosophy. Just stay busy. But staying busy isn't staying productive. You can stay busy accomplishing nothing. You can stay busy expending resources, emotional resources, financial resources, relational resources. Energy depletion is a big deal, especially as you get older. If you're wasting your time, your money, your emotional resources, at the end of the day, you may have produced something, but you've got output, not outcome. Those are totally different. In order to succeed, you've got to actually do the right things, not just something, but the right things. You've got to do the things that are actually going to move you forward. Now, a lot of people look at Pareto principle and they say, well, 80-20 rule, out of 100 things that I could do, 20 of those are really going to make me more successful. Out of 10 things, 2 of them are really going to move the needle. And the other 8 might just be a waste of time, or they might just be time consuming. I remember High Performance Academy by Brendan Burchard. Goodness, it's been almost 10 years ago that I went through that training. And he said, when you get an email from somebody and you're answering their question or solving the problem isn't going to move the needle forward, then ask yourself, if I give it back to them, what do they need to do to move the needle forward? Or what one answer do I need from them? What one more step, one more process, one more agreement do I need from the other side, whoever sent me that email, before I can move forward with an answer, a solution, an action that will end this process? If I can't end the process of this back and forth with one action, put the ball back in their court. Well, I guess in a lot of environments, that's a very effective way of saying, this is not on my desk right now. If I can't solve the problem, it's not my problem to solve. That's a good point. If I can't solve it, where does it need to go to be solved? Now, there are a lot of people who would take an action like that, bounce the email back to you, when actually the solution was in their hand. The ability to fix the problem was within their realm of influence. They had the authority, they had the access, they had the time, they had the resources. They just refused to act. That's a different kind of problem. It is a leadership problem. But see, we also have those people who are just so busy about getting stuff done, they don't ask, is this the right thing to do at the right time? Is now the right time to do that thing? Put the chocolate chips in the oven. Well, you might want to take them out of the bag. You might want to put them in the batter. You might want to mix them up with the other cookie stuff in order to make chocolate chip cookies. Otherwise, we're going to have a chocolate melted mess on the pan that you may never get off of there. Putting the chocolate chip cookies in the oven is not a wrong thing to do. But if they're still in the bag, it's a problem. If they're out of the bag and on the pan, it's a problem. If they're out of the bag on the pan with just a bunch of eggs, still a problem. You follow me? How many of the things are you doing in your business, in your relationships, in your communication that are the right thing, but they're out of order? One of the things in the StoryPower process that we talk about a lot is it's not just, can you tell a story? I can't tell you from the NSA to Toastmasters to every public speaking course you'll ever find online. What they'll tell you over and over is tell a story. You got to tell a story. Well, yes, you have to tell a story. But in the StoryPower process, we don't just tell a story for the sake of telling a story, because anybody can get a fictional story from AI. Anybody can grab one out of a book. I have books upon books upon books of quotes and anecdotes and stories and illustrations and jokes and political commentary. I could pull from any one of them. Sometimes I do quote other people's content, and I give full credit for that. But reading someone else's story isn't telling a story in the same way that I recommend in StoryPower Method. In the StoryPower Method, the first thing I say is, why don't we mine some stories from your life? Not just because they're entertaining, but because they were an aha moment. Now, again, if you get this out of order, you could be doing the right thing, telling a story, but do it at the wrong time. You can tell a story when people are really just asking a question. That's fine, if you've selected the right story. Oh, trust me, I answer questions with stories all the time, especially on podcast interviews, sitting down face to face. A lot of times with my coaching, and I have coaching clients whose brain doesn't process quite that way yet. They ask, why do you do this? Well, there's a story for that. And if you'll listen to the story, you'll learn more than because I like blue. You'll also learn how to use a story to answer a question. Some people's brains don't think that way yet. And so they think, well, why do you do it this way? Well, because I like blue. You know what that's not? It's not a conversation. So was the story about why I chose that thing, that color, that place, that time? Was that important? Maybe even on levels that they weren't yet ready to understand. When the student is ready, the teacher will come. Doesn't usually mean the teacher is hiding from you. It means you're not ready to understand or apply that answer yet. In leadership, in coaching, in communication, providing that information at the wrong time can be the wrong thing. But as a leader who's observant of the people that you're leading, that you're speaking to, that you're communicating with, that goes way back to the StoryPower Method of mining the right story. Is this the right time to tell that story? Is as important to, is this the right story to tell at this time? And if you only have one story, or maybe 5, if that's all you got, the answer, is this the right story to tell at this time, doesn't really have another alternative, does it? You've only got a certain number of stories that you've worked through in your head. I was working with a client the other day. They gave this long, sophisticated, accurate, well thought out answer. And when they were done, I said, now how do you get from that answer to this solution that you want to provide? Because I know what your heart and your mind are saying is, this is the technical answer, but eventually I'm going to leap over to this other social, psychological, emotional, relational answer. And right now, there's no correlation between them. Well, that correlation doesn't happen by accident. That correlation isn't tell a story, walk across the room, make a point. Come back to the storytelling spot and tell another story, and then walk across the room and make a point. That's not how good communication happens. But when the story and the point, when the experience that you've lived through, the aha moment for you that others can watch and go, oh, I didn't have to go through that, but I learned that myself. Thank you for that. Without having to say, you need to learn this. When you can wrap that metaphor, that analogy, that illustration into the story you're going to tell anyway, you can really advance the opportunity to communicate with someone. That's a very important feature in leadership. When you get that out of order, when you decide, I'm just going to jump to the end and tell a story because stories are entertaining, and then I'm going to attach a point on the end of that, you've missed all of the 3 steps in the first place. You're putting chocolate chips in the oven. You're mixing up your lye soap, your gravy, and your pancake batter with big old lumps in it. You've left parts of it undone. And that's not just in your leadership, it's in the details of your communication, because you got to go back to the beginning. Now, the beginning of the beginning is at the end. Let me say that again. The beginning of the beginning is at the end. Stephen Covey told us, begin with the end in mind. So what is the end of good communication? It's a narrative. It's an overall idea. It's the meta-narrative. It's why do you even communicate in the first place? Is it for gaining buy-in? Is it for building resources? Maybe it's donations, maybe it's volunteers, maybe it's people who come around your cause and invest themselves into it. Maybe it's just getting your team to follow the instructions you've given them. Maybe your meta-narrative is your corporate vision or your mission statement. Maybe your meta-narrative is people like us do things like this. Seth Godin. Whatever that meta-narrative is, that's the why that you communicate. That's the end result. That's the outcome. That's the output when measured properly. But if you just start communicating, telling stories in order to make a point, you jump all the way to the end of that, you've got the whole process out of order. Because when you know the meta-narrative, the end of the end, it is also the beginning. Now you go back and say, okay, if my narrative is my vision statement, and my vision statement is to accomplish world peace, what are the stories that demonstrate that I have the expertise necessary to lead people into world peace? I don't. I haven't figured that out yet. But if that was my meta-narrative, if that was my mission, if that was my goal, then every story that I tell should point that direction. Every story that I tell should be another demonstration of my credibility, my credential, the context and the content, so that people look at that story in their life and go, I see how that story matches my story, makes me not only want to retell my story, but take action on the lesson you learned that I haven't yet learned. It's called a win-win checklist. A win-win-win checklist. 3 wins. The first win, they hear your story and go, wow, your story really moved me. The second win, they're compelled to tell you their story because they're so much alike. And the third win is when they acknowledge your story and my story are almost exactly alike. The pain that you experienced, the problem you encountered, I know that problem. I know that pain. I've been there. I get it. I'm still dealing with it. The difference is you found a solution I don't have yet, and now I'm going to take action on that solution. Trust me, friends, when I say craft a story, mining the stories of your life, selecting the stories that you're actually going to tell in the course of your communication, whether it's a podcast interview, a platform presentation, the writing of a book, the crafting of your mission statement for your organization, or working with people one-on-one, selecting the stories you're going to tell and then qualifying them. Now you're finally to the place where you can look at that story and go, okay, I'm going to write a good story. It's not just going to be somewhat entertaining. All of those facets and all of those layers are going to be buried in that story. Now we're down to the chocolate chips at just the right time. If you leave your eggs out on the counter while you're making your chocolate chip cookies, did you know you're going to get a different result from room temperature eggs than refrigerated eggs while you're making your cookies? Ask your chef, ask your baker. My aunt used to run the bakeries for H-E-B. And every morning that she was going to cook something with eggs, the first thing she would do is come in and take them out of the refrigerator and put them on the counter. In fact, my daughter has chickens. She raises her own. She has her own eggs. Those eggs don't get refrigerated. Why? Because there's a different thing with eggs that have to be refrigerated to stay fresh and ones that don't. I'm not a chemist enough to know what it is in an egg, but I can tell you this, if you've got a story that you've only told one time to yourself, or you've got a story that you snatched out of a book and you have no idea what the triggers, what the emotional relationship is between that story and the people you're going to be talking to, you've already got something out of order. But when you start with story mining because you know what's your narrative, and you move that story mining into story selection because you know what's your narrative, because you're going to move that story selection, story mining into story crafting, and now that you've got a qualified story, well crafted, you know what audience it's for. When you wrote that story, you knew who you were going to be talking to, what their pain or problem was going to be, how you were going to solve that problem for them or with them. And now you can move from story selection to story crafting to connecting, so that when people hear that story, they want to repeat it, if only to themselves and their friends. They know that what they heard meant something deeply emotional to them, and it's going to give them a solution in their life that they never had before. And now we go right back to the fourth step, and that is the narrative. Now, if you've got 100 stories, which is what I tell my clients I want you to have, I want you to have 2 things when you're done working with me. Number 1, I want you to have 100 stories. And number 2, I want you to have the skill set that allows you to identify a story so fast, you don't have to go back and mine it from your 10-year-old days or your 25-year-old experience in the military or your 50-year-old experience just before you retired. You can step out of your car, trip over a Coke bottle, and have a new story because you've mastered the skill set that says, I know what a good story looks like, I know what a good story feels like, I know how to transfer that moment of learning to a comprehensive teaching for someone else, where it doesn't sound like I'm judging or instructing. I'm just telling them what happened to me, knowing that the way I've crafted that story is valuable to them. I'm not trying to pound learning into their head. I'm just telling them what happened to me, knowing that if I've crafted it well, I can make transformation happen in their life. The story power process is a very specific process. You get it out of order and it doesn't work. If you start telling stories because stories are entertaining, you got chocolate chips in the oven. You got lye in your soap. You got lumps in your gravy and your pancakes. A lot of people feel like if I just tell stories, I'll be better as a communicator. Well, you will. But if you tell intentional stories, if you apply the StoryPower method, you'll have better stories, more qualified stories, more impactful stories. There are a whole lot of people who will teach you how to tell a story, how to hold your face right, how to have just the right voice inflection, add the drama, create the visual moment where other people see what you saw and felt what you felt, and that by itself is a problem. And if you're in the StoryPower training, I'll teach you why word pictures are psychologically dangerous. There are a lot of people who teach you to do that. It's just my opinion. 20 years studying communication and psychology, 30 years studying leadership. I think I can give you a pretty good explanation of why I believe word pictures can be dangerous. You have to discuss it with me privately, though. You have to jump into the StoryPower Academy and either take the 6 weeks training course or join the StoryPower retreat that's coming up in June. But if you're just going to tell stories, might as well just throw the pancakes in the oven. I mean, chocolate chips in the skillet. Leave your eggs frozen when you start to make things with them. Well, there are a lot of ways to do it. You can go about it 1,000 different ways. There's also 1,000 different ways to die. That was a great show. I used to watch it on HBO all the time. If you're going to tell stories, though, do me a favor. Don't do the wrong thing at the wrong time. Don't just tell a story because it's entertaining. Take the time to mine a good story, craft a good story, connect that story to the audience that needs your help, and make sure it fits within the narrative of what you do. Don't just tell abstract stories because they're fun. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the StoryPower Academy Retreat. This StoryPower Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us, get away, and relax.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPower